Hey, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Clinic Gym Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Satterlee, and it's my pleasure today to be joined by Rett Larson. Rett, how are you?
I'm great. I mean, now I'm excited that this is another exciting podcast. Like we've already put a bar up there that I have to clear.
Yeah, well, it's going to be exciting because we're going to go into this with an incredible warm-up, which I know is your specialty, so I'm just kind of warming you up neurologically to deliver a great, exciting episode. So, Rett, for those people listening that are like, hey, that name sounds kind of familiar, but I don't really know, can you give everybody a little shot of your background or who your current, what would you call it? Your current coworkers, I guess, would be an interesting way to phrase that.
Right. So currently I am the strength and conditioning coach for the German women's national volleyball team. This will be only my second year with this team. Before that, I was with the Dutch women's volleyball team for a couple of years. And before that, I put in 5.5 years with the Chinese women's volleyball team. And that was only part of my big gig in China. I was there for almost 8 years in total, working with I've only recently been a volleyball guy, or a women's volleyball guy at that. But before that, I spent my first 4 years in China with a myriad of different sports. This is when I was working for Exos, and they had us working with them in conjunction with the Chinese Olympic Committee, had us working with all of kind of the gold medal factories of China, with diving and table tennis and gymnastics and shooting and archery, just these really, really fun sports I'm sure from a physio standpoint, but also from a strength and conditioning standpoint. It's super fun to sink your teeth into, oh man, how do I make a guy that just shoots a pistol all day better at that sport? And so, anyway, so I did that for a long time. I was in China. I think I was a China guy for a long time. And then prior to that, I was working in big box facilities, much like a lot of probably your listeners out there, where we working with the general population as well as, amateur and elite athletes, kind of cutting my teeth. I worked with a ton of young athletes. I spent 10 years with Velocity Sports Performance, which at the time was really, really foundational in working with kind of 8 to 18-year-olds, which that's something that I am always recommending that coaches get some experience with, because I take the lessons of working with 8 and 12-year-olds. I use those lessons constantly when it comes to like group control. I use them constantly when I'm working with Olympians.
You went from you ended with a group that doesn't understand what you're saying, but luckily you had started with a group that just doesn't care what you're saying.
Couldn't give a crap what I said.
Yeah,
right.
It's like, we speak perfect English. Lessons. I'm just not going to listen to you.
You know what? A timeout works in any country. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
Josh, I can put somebody in timeout anywhere in the world. They get it.
Right. And you just work on that dad voice of like, you're out, and it's like the pump of a shotgun. Like it spans all languages, all,
That's right.
Translates across. That pointing and the bleachers.
I have a stare that just makes people feel so guilty, just makes them feel so bad for disappointing me. And I perfected that.
That's awesome. Well, the exciting thing, I know from talking to some other folks who were involved in coaching and training and athlete care during that point that you're talking about being with the Chinese, it was this perfect storm that I don't know if ever could happen again, where they're going to host the Olympics and you have a culture that is like, if we don't get a gold medal in everything, including air quality, we're just going to kill ourselves. And then combine that with an economy that was booming. So we have enough money to throw at any problem. Like if you say we need 4 MRI machines per volleyball court, we'll get them. And then combine that with a country that essentially has, like the U.S. has an Olympic training center for track, right? And as I understand it, the Chinese essentially have 8 Olympic training centers just for track. Like the number of elite level athletes, just because you have billions of people, is higher. And then it gets down to, well, who is the one we want to select for this? So it's almost like we have unlimited athletes for you. Do what you can with them. If they fall apart or break, that's okay, because we have 38 more guys that can run that fast right behind them. And then here's a bunch of money and solve our problems.
Yep.
Do I pretty much have that period of time
nailed it. I mean, they are not afraid to break some eggs making the old Olympic omelet, and they have so much money. I mean, that's why I don't think the Beijing opening ceremonies will ever be topped. Like just that facility will never be topped. They poured cash into that. And
I'm sure they thought about handing everybody in the stadium $10,000 just to watch. Like they were close to saying, let's just,
super close.
We haven't spent enough billions of dollars on the opening ceremony. Crank it up.
We need smiles, always smiles.
That's right.
They were super smart about it because like in pouring money into sports, they also just want to maximize gold medals. So they're not pouring money into a lot of team sports. They pour money into individual sports because $1 million given to the archery team can net you whatever it is, 12 medals. $1 million to the women's basketball team at best gets you 1 medal. And so, and for that reason, they even pushed more money into women's sports than men's, hoping that the rest of the world isn't doing that. Because for the Chinese, it is about that last number at the end of the Olympics, who has more golds, not total medals, just golds. And so it was really interesting to see how that played out and how, and we were one of those, as Exos representatives, we were kind of a big value add. So we were deployed to only the most important teams. And you would see, like, we rarely went to team sports. It was only like the only team sport that I think we worked with were at that time was just women's volleyball, because they are the exception to everything I just said. They're the one team sport in all of China that has ever gotten them a gold medal in anything. Olympics, World Cup, World Championships, whatever it is, no team sport, women's or men's, has ever done anything except for women's volleyball.
I wonder if there was a $2.5 million in a check that was placed on the, in the cockpit of the plane bringing Michael Phelps over. Like, listen, if you don't land in China, you just go ahead and take that check. We're not going to say anything. We just don't want one guy that can pull 11 golds out of the race, or whatever it was. Yeah.
I'm sure it was talked about. It has to have been talked about.
Anyways, well, I'm really excited to have you here and be able to interview you today, because you have written some amazing articles and shot some videos on Instagram and everything, really covering an area that I think is often forgotten or overlooked in its power, which is that of the warm-up in any kind of fitness program.
Yeah, the most exciting thing for any strength and conditioning coach to talk about. Good old warm-ups.
Well,
I agree. You're preaching to the choir. I agree. It's one of the most underused portions of training.
I remember reading this article all about MRI machines, and when they were first invented, it was actually in the Smithsonian Magazine, which was one of those magazines you can only get if you're old and a father or something. My dad got a subscription. It was talking about the development of the first MRI machine, and at some point, somebody said, what's interesting is this will give you a very accurate representation of body fat percentage, incredibly accurate. And then somebody else is like, yeah, it could do that, but we could also image things like discs and ligaments and tendons. And they're like, yeah, well, you could do this. And I just think in all of life, there are certain things where it's like, hey, we have this technology or this product or this thing, and we're using it for its lowest value role. Like, we are devaluing it, and we have the opportunity to increase its value. If we just kind of change our perspective. And luckily with MRI, somebody went, yeah, let's use it more for the ligaments and discs and tendons. And the body fat percentage is like, I could do that with $12 calipers, and what does it matter? Like, right. So I think you're taking the warm up and really making it valuable. But let me ask you this. So you've been around the world. You've coached in America. You've coached in Europe, basically. You've coached in Asia. You've been at the Olympic level. What percentage of warm-ups on all scales would you say involve foam rolling?
Oh my God. Okay, so 95, I would say.
And it spans all languages, all religions,
every
backgrounds.
Every single place I've ever worked. I'm almost from it. Like, it's always funny for me the first day when every girl walks in with their own foam roller. Yeah. Like in China, the house had the foam, the gym has the foam roller, but like in Europe, every girl, and it's almost a status symbol, like which ones vibrate. Oh, mine's ice cold. Mine can be turned up to 104 degrees. That's awesome. It's like the nicer and nicer foam rollers. And I think they're a little disappointed to hear that I don't prioritize a ton of foam rolling in my movement prep or my warm up time.
Yep.
I'm not completely anti foam roller.
No,
I don't know if we're talking about this, but you're right. They're ubiquitous.
Two funny things. Number one, I'm sure the dude that designed the vibrating heated roller wants to throw himself through his cell phone every time he hears people say foam roller. It's like, it's not foam. I perfected the PVC wrapped with urethane, neoprene, and a vibrating motor. It's not foam, damn it. Because foam is like, oh yeah, this styrofoam takeout container, blah, blah, blah. And he's probably like dying inside, like, I've spent my whole life perfecting it with a motor. And,
That's great. Yeah. I'm sure the branding people that sat at a table forever over whatever hyper vibro ice thing, they came up with the perfect whatever acronym, and no, everyone just says, oh, you've got a hot foam roller. Okay.
Exactly. The other thing is I love foam rolling as a start to, so if I talk in the general fitness population, it serves a lot of roles, and I'll make my little argument for it. Yeah. I don't think it does much to increase flexibility, but what I like about it is if somebody's working at a desk job all day long, which most people do now, not in your world because they're super active, but I'm talking about sedentary going to the gym. Number one, it gets you on the ground and you do some modified crawling positions, right? You're on your right arm, you're short lever, long lever, you're flipping over, you're crab crawling, you're doing all this stuff. I love that because you're just not doing that in daily life. Second thing is, when our motor control systems are essentially asleep all day, like we're not getting any stimulation because we're sitting at a desk, the pressure of the foam roller stimulates the GTOs, it stimulates the mechanoreceptors, it does you remember the corpuscles, those things we had to study that really don't matter to anybody, the corpuscles, and it starts sending some afferent information up to the brain, lighting it up and saying, hey, like, don't forget you have a, fibularis or there is that tibial bone. And so for that setting, I think it's great. And the second thing is, as you know, if you work in a big box gym, having something to do for the first 5 minutes where, 80% of the people are there, somebody's running in late, somebody's using the bathroom and come out, you're still there. Yep. And you kind of talk and say like, hey, Rett, what's going on? Oh, you got a promotion? Cool. Like, it's great for that.
Agreed.
But for elite level performance, you're like, I ain't got time for that. And plus, I can't even understand what these ladies are saying, so I don't want to converse.
Yeah. For me, nobody can say, sorry, I was running late at work. I'm sorry I didn't get here on time. Right. No, this is your job. So this is your job. And so that's why everybody else on the team was here 15 minutes early, doing their own very, very individualized foam rolling.
But those are table stakes for you guys, right? Like, hey, you just got to buy in. You've already done foam rolling or your movement prep or whatever, your rehab, your correctives. So and this was my problem.
So that when I had foam rolling, and I've been a part of systems that had, I mentioned Exos and all these, they all have foam rolling embedded into that movement prep, that warm up session. And it's great when it has to be led by a coach for me to find it to be as effective. When I would do it with the Chinese, and it became very popular to give autonomy to your athletes, I would say, hey, listen, we all have different things that hurt. We all have different things that need to be released. We all have things that, we like to roll before we go to war, right? It could be a placebo, but a placebo is still a big deal.
It's free.
Huge. So I was like, all right, so I'm just going to give everybody 2 minutes, 3 minutes to do whatever they want. And I swear, after 1 minute, the entire group would just be lying on their back. I'd be like, there's not that many people with T-spine problems. Like, everyone would just default. It was the biggest speed bump record scratch, like wah, wah, two. But I felt like was the momentum of a warm-up that I want to be impactful. And so I just said, at subsequent jobs, and even the next year in the Chinese, I said, listen, I think it's beneficial. Clearly, if you think it is, get it all done before I start my warm-up. Because once I start, we're going.
Well, the reassuring thing is it's not just an American problem or an American reliance, right? It's international at all levels. It doesn't matter. So let's not feel bad about ourselves. But what was the first time you literally, you remember sitting there going, I got to change things. Like I'm not using this warm up well enough, or I'm not incorporating enough stuff. Did you, did somebody give you some feedback, or did an athlete ask you something, or did you just have an epiphany in the middle of the night? What kind of changed started this path?
Well, it started when I became a freelance person. I could actually kind of think on my own and do it. And I could kind of, I had been working in systems and big corporate systems for like 15 years. And I really, I liked what they did, but I'm also a creative person. I'm also somebody that really likes to be able to, I'm a chef that likes to be able to put my own little secret sauce into things. And I felt like, okay, well, let's rethink what everyone thinks are the best practices. Honestly, and I'll tell you, we've been talking about the international thing. One of the things that opened my mind about working in China is that I am seeing French physios and there's a Dutch, there's super smart Dutch strength coaches. There's this person. I was like, wait a second, there's a whole group of Europeans physios that have never heard of the FMS. I was like, what? Yeah. I just assume that's what you all do. Like, because that's in America, you don't walk into a facility that doesn't have an FMS kit sitting in on the side. Or is it, but similarly with how to warm people up. And like, there's so many different ways to do things. And you're exposed to that a lot more when you start working in different countries that don't have our preconceived best practices that have been, put into the NSCA textbook and spouted by the Perform Better crew for 12 years. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and so I started thinking, okay, well, how can I do this that is not necessarily better, but is maybe more my style? Because my style is definitely not just walking and small talking to 20 girls while they foam roll, if whatever amount of time I'm given, I need to be the most productive. So it's when I got to the Chinese team and I was kind of working on my own that I said, all right, tell me what are the things that these girls need or think they need to go to war. All right. So there's there's 7 super dumb stretches that they love, right? I could give a crap.
Look, brother, I work with country club golfers. So I got to say, I don't care how dumb those stretches appear. I think I could beat you with 5 to 10, even worse, even dumber stretches that are doing absolutely nothing. So, but the old like golf club over the head. Turn right, turn left. Hey, that just erased 98 hours of working behind my desk. I can perform a plyometric activity while drunk. Sure. Let's go.
I love it. Yeah. Oh my God. It's so similar. I just sit there, and this is part of the survival of China, is that you just have to sit there and just bite your bottom lip and be like, this will be over soon. This will be over soon. And then I think, what can I do to maximize the last whatever minutes? And I think it's like the information age, Josh. Like all of a sudden I'm also getting 1,000 ideas on my phone all the time. I'm like, oh my God, should I be doing X? Should I be doing X? Like there's somebody just came out with a whole different shoulder routine. I meet physios, and I'll meet a physio that is like, Rett, you're not getting the most out of Turkish get-ups. Let me show you 3 different Turkish get-up variations that I swear we won't have any shoulder problems if we do these every day. Well, I'm not in the weight room with these girls every day. So I'm like, all right, but that becomes a part of warm-up. All right, let's just do it in warm up. And so I started thinking, anything can get them warm. How can I make the things that get them warm also the stuff that I'm dying, that everyone tells me is great, or that I know myself are just essential for volleyball players to do?
Yeah. It's interesting. The most impactful, one of the most impactful in a large scale lessons I ever had on exercise was, my kids joined this thing called, we took them when they're like young, 3 years old, called My Gym. Have you ever heard of this?
I absolutely know it.
Yeah. I don't know if you've taken your kid, but at ours locally, it had this incredible, I don't know what they call them, facilitator, trainer, whatever. And they would physically change the layout of the gym every week. So they'd move like the high bar over the ball pit. So the kids would jump to it, right? They would turn stairs into tunnels. They would turn all this stuff. And I saw like, oh my God, they completely changed the intention of this place by just moving some pieces around. So one of the things I always recommend for people when they're building out their small gym, like if you have 1,000 square foot gym, so we're talking about people who are bolting this thing onto their clinic, right? I know that you saw the bird's nest, homie. Like you've seen what money can get you, but 1,000 square feet or something, if you could put everything on wheels and just change it up quarterly or monthly or something, you'll be amazed at how much more creative you get with exercises. And the flip side of that is I would bet all the money in my wallet right now, you've had this experience. When you show up and maybe the bags and the equipment didn't make it. And so it's like, what can you do with a gym floor and 8 girls or whatever it is, 8 women?
Yep.
You got to get creative because like so many people rely on, oh, I got these toys or this technology or this Kaiser or this, ski erg. And it's like, great. Let's say that it's broken. What do you do now? It's like,
Yep.
I go to the air bike. That's broken too.
Yep.
So anyways, have you had that experience of like, I have nothing?
More preaching to the choir. Like I love hearing this because it took me back to when I was a little kid and I would, I don't know, every 2 months, like want to rearrange my bedroom and put the bed over there and my couch, like all of my toys box over there, just because it breathes energy. You get excited going into it. I mean, it's the same thing when that I want out of my warm-ups is I want my athletes to see a different arrangement of stuff all the time. Like, and I want them not like when warm-up starts, the athletes will come to me and say like, okay, Rhett, how are we starting? And it's me saying, okay, it's either, all right, individuals in a circle. Nope. Pair up in groups of 3 on the 5 blue cones. Okay. Nope. It is like this, and this. And I want them wondering why there's a pile of water balloons in the corner. I want them wondering like what we're doing with hula hoops, why there's a jar of kerosene next to it. Like, I want that excitement that comes from the unknown. I mean, that's part of the gamification of training, which is real popular right now. But what you're talking about is what I think, is really can be intimidating as a coach, but we travel a ton, where I'm seeing 6 different foreign weight rooms and every single summer. That's always that fun challenge for me. It's like, oh my God. All right. How do I take 12 girls into a Holiday Inn Express weight room and get meaningful work done? But that's where, your brain comes alive and you start to develop a tool belt full of stuff that is either no equipment based or super creative.
I love it.
Yeah.
So for those listening, you have you've seen a lot of systems, you've worked in a lot of systems, and so now you can get creative. But if we start just at the fundamentals, what, as you look back, what are, if you said the 3 or 4 or 2 things we should always make sure we hit in a warm-up? Like, so I've always been taught increase body temperature, stimulate the neurological system, and prepare any major movements you're going to do. So if you're going to squat, see if you can get the hips, knees, and ankles into flexion, right? Like somewhere in the warm-up. That's kind of the rules I've always learned. But when I watch yours and I read your article, you think about it on a different level, man.
No, I think you just took my answer, Josh. I'm waiting for you to ask the
All right. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for listening to today's podcast. At the very, at the basic level, when you say just the basics, it is. Thermogenics is warming the tissues up, right? That is the bare minimum for just keeping people from getting hurt, is get everybody super hence warm. The term warm up. Like, right. I mean, it literally is.
I know. So we have in the Netherlands, like there's a bunch of tough girls, right? So it'll be freezing cold in the facility and they'll just be in, tank top and little shorts. I'm like, I know you're super tough and cool. I need you to put on all your sweats. Like, you're just making my job hard if you're not. I mean, I need to cheat my way to the bare minimum of this. Don't make me have to sprint you around just to get you a thin sheen of sweat.
Right.
Getting tissue temperature is up. During that warm up, it behooves me to get you into as many volleyball shapes as possible. I want to get you through every single joint range of motion that I think you might see on a volleyball court.
So that would be like, oh, go ahead.
Specifically exactly what you said, which is that ankles need need all the dorsiflexion that you have. That protects the knee, right? And so your hips need a ton of mobility to protect your lower back and your knee. It's that joint by joint approach to training. Right. I've still followed that to a T. T-spines, shoulders, and that kind of at the bare minimum, those joints have to be mobilized, I think aggressively. But I don't believe in spending too much time with it. If they're warm and I've kind of ticked the box on those 5 joints, then did I miscount 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 joints? Then I kind of feel good moving on, because hopefully, if I've done it right, that third part that you mentioned, neurological, kind of activation, that third part will also make them make some of those shapes too. So we'll reinforce a lot of that. You kind of hit the box. It is thermogenics. It's making them, move through a bunch of volleyball positions or stretch into volleyball positions. and then neurologically activate the system and make sure they're ready to take good reps right when practice starts.
And I think one thing that shines through your work is those three priorities in a pool or in a tub full of engagement of the athlete. Like there's no way they can be thinking about their next TikTok, checking TikTok, or who's in the stands or whatever. They're engaged in the work you're doing, which I think is foam rolling. Can be less engaging. People get to the point where they can do it while texting, and it's like, okay, we have a problem here.
The last thing I want is for athletes to be able to kind of sleepwalk through my warm up because they know what's coming next. I think that is the enemy of athleticism. I think pushing them to those messy outer edges of their athleticism is what a safe space like warm up should be for. That if you're just going through the same tired arm swings, hip swivels, skips, and jumps, and all the stuff that you've done over and over again, am I really moving the needle on these athletes' athleticism? Or is this a better time for me to be trying to get them to that edge of failure where we know, the athletes start to actually make some progress? And that could be the edge of failure of, strength. That could be the edge of failure of coordination or agility. That could be, doing some mobility work that is like weighted stretches that, we're pushing them that way. But I definitely, I think it's such a waste to just be doing the same, even if the same thing you do every time is a greatest hits. It's still of warm up stuff that you think like it's still, if it's the same, I think you're missing an opportunity to engage your athletes and to push their athleticism to new heights.
Right. So with at this point in your career, I mean, you're very, very experienced.
You're saying I'm old. Josh, that's super rude.
I never said that. I mean, just because you started coaching on your 8th birthday, you still
threw 2 berries. That's
I just mean you've worked for 17 different countries, and
I can't keep a job. Got it. Keep on going. That's great. Yep, got it.
Well, listen, if you should really think about doing this all in a tuxedo, because then people would think you're a spy. You know what I mean? At least like, why is he going from the German team to the Dutch team? It's like, well, that's not really his job.
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry, Josh. I interrupted.
No.
Go. I see what you're
it's like when you hear these spies in real life, they always have some job at like the Department of Agriculture or something. It's like, I can drive into the mountains randomly and look at these missile silos because we're looking at the growth of poppies on the hills. Like,
that's right. And I just have to get my team to travel and to different very high strategic targets every year. Yeah.
We'll work on it. We got some planning to do. But going back to it, do you at this point try and get your warm up to change every day for every practice? Do you have a list of 11 that you kind of cycle through? How best do you find it working?
Yeah, it probably started as like a dozen or so that I loved, and then it just blew up. But now it's to the point where, I mean, certainly in a given month, I wouldn't want to do this like a similar warm up twice. They'll never be the same because it's always like I'm always even. All right, so I have an Excel spreadsheet, and so every day I've plotted out the big points of the warm up I've written, and it's all based on, okay, what equipment do I have available? What's my space look like? Like, because sometimes I'm in a gym that is right next to a weight room. Oh crap, I have a bunch of kettlebells that I could use. I have 12 kettlebells that are light enough that we could do X with, or heavy enough that we could do Y with. Or maybe, I'm in a facility that just happens to have a bunch of like sticks in it, and I can use sticks for like some fun stuff. So it depends on equipment, but it also, when I'm planning a week, like I'm typically looking at, all right, big picture, what are the kind of the biomechanical goals that I want to hit that week? And when I say what I want to hit, what am I actually thinking? What does my head coach want to see from me that week? So let me answer your question before I go on too long. I probably have like 30 or 40 distinct warm-ups using a bunch of different stuff that, I have one that I call my like tennis ball reaction warm-up. I have one that's called my stick mobility warm-up. I have one that's called my stick agility warm-up. And that just means that there will be one kind of fun or engaging exercise activity that I'll do and superset with 2 or 3 other distinct other things. So it'll be like, okay, we're going to do kind of this stick pickup drill where the girls are trying to fake each other out, dropping a stick, and the other one has to try to run around and get it. Well, I have like a 6-step progression to that particular drill. And so we'll do the easiest progression of that right off the bat, start getting everybody moving. And then, hey, everybody drop down and let's do that Turkish get up, because we have a bunch of kettlebells. Half of you are doing Turkish get ups. Half of you are doing some sissy squats against the wall for some out of alignment kind of strength. And then, okay, switch that up. Everybody go back to the stick drill. Boom, we're now moving again. And at the end of it, we've gone through 3-4 progressions of that stick drop agility drill that have gotten faster and faster, more difficult, more cognitively difficult. While also I've gotten 3 kind of micro dose strength sessions of Turkish get-ups and sissy squats. And so maybe in 3 weeks, I'll copy and paste that warm up, but I'll change out sissy squats for maybe another out of alignment strength exercise because potentially I've done sissy squats recently. I don't track it well enough to be able to copy it exactly.
It sounds like if we think about those 3 major parts of warm up, that if everybody listening said, okay, I'm going to have a batch of a spreadsheet that has 3 divisions: thermogenesis, neurological, and then whatever we're saying.
Stretching. Let's say stretching.
Yeah, stretching, big movement.
Yep.
And if I put 5 into each and just randomly match them up, I should have 5 times 5 is 25 combinations times 5, 125 combinations there, right? Just the tennis ball thing you said never goes with the first time you see it paired with, I'm trying to think, sissy squats, it shall never be those 2 in the same combination again for
very likely
at least
not.
30 days, right?
Yeah,
or
very likely not, unless it's just randomly occurs like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's just been slowly accumulating those that kind of theme or that major exercise of the day. Because if I happen to have hula hoops, if I happen to have tennis balls, if I happen to have medicine balls, if I happen to have sticks, if I happen to have, so for all of the hacky sacks, I mean, water balloons, anything, I've just built out these kind of what I think are very engaging, fun, the things that the girls like to do and are challenged to do and are dialed in on. And then it's like, okay, all right, everybody calm down, hit the ground. It's time to do this, this isometric exercise that normally you would hate. Right. But let me see if I can, but if we're doing an isometric split squat, but tossing this water balloon back and forth, we're having more fun. It's more engaging.
Here's what I picture, Brett. Let's say you go to Columbus, Ohio, and you're staring, and there's the Rogue factory and outlet, right? And you're like, I mean, essentially anything manufactured. You go to Providence, and there's Perform Better headquarters. Like, you're like, that's cool. But there's a dollar store like a block down. Yeah. And they've got hula hoops, there's a kitty litter, and
there's a Toys R Us going out of business. I'll be right back.
Right. Yeah. Listen, I need 12 different sizes of teddy bears. I need 4 sizes of hula hoops, some palm olive, and all of the linoleum floor you have.
You only knew how true that was. If you only knew. That's actually, I mean, I have bought out I buy, usually whenever I take a job, I go a beeline to the first toy store and buy out all their Frisbees. I buy out all their hacky sacks. I buy out like things that are light and cheap. I just go, that's like week 1 of a new job, like 2x4s to balance on, like big long boards, like all that stuff I pick up in week 1 and start my brain working on how I can make this crazy in the space they have.
I love it. So one thing I know I don't want to take too much of your time, and I really appreciate your time, and I could talk about this stuff all day. So if you got to go.
Nope, you got me.
Okay, cool. Good. One thing that I want everybody listening to recognize too is there's something called the primacy effect. And I learned this from a cop patient of mine. The primacy effect is you remember what happens at the very beginning of an interaction. And then second to that, at about 50%, you'll realize at the end, you'll remember, right? Recency effect. So this is why cops, when they show up on a site where there's a fight going on, they need to establish authority right now and aggressively. They don't sit back and kind of watch and whatever. They come hard and heavy, he says, because it restores order. When you're doing fitness stuff, when you're doing a strength coach as Rhett is at the highest levels of athleticism, or, if you're running a small gym, the warm up is typically on the front end. So what you do there is the thing that people will remember because of the primacy effect. They may not remember that in the middle you did, 3 sets of 10 of the same exercise you've been doing. So one of the advantages of the warm up is if you make it incredibly engaging, like what Rhett does, you have an advantage there that people start remembering, oh, I love this place because the workout is always different, which people seem to like that novelty of it.
Yeah.
But the difficulty for us as responsible, well-trained strength coaches is to say, making every workout different, it induces risk that maybe we don't want to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So if instead of doing the loaded portions, I'm simplifying this a lot, but instead of doing the loaded portions differently every time, perhaps what you could do is vary the warm-up, which is on the front end. It's going to stick in their memories a little bit more. Vary the hell out of that thing, make it a super game, and then we can go into the quote-unquote same old exercise routine and buy off a little more safety there.
Yep.
And do you still do that at the elite levels? Because I know, like, coming out of, like, a lot of people in my gym were like, I can remember a couple days ago when they were injured, or maybe weeks or months ago they were injured. So I certainly don't want to push the level to get them re-injured and have essentially no net gain in the weight room. But instead, like, what I'm thinking now is the solution to this, which is make an incredibly varied, novel, different, but yet engaging warm-up, and that's going to stick in their minds.
Yeah, a couple of notes. One of which is I remember when I was a personal trainer at the very beginning of my career, and I remember the head personal trainer coming to me and saying, "You see half of the personal trainers in here, the first thing they have their client do is jump on a treadmill and jog for 5 minutes to warm up." He's like, "If you don't do that, if you do something else, you'll put them all out of business." He's like, "The reason I'm the head personal trainer is I've never had anybody step on a treadmill to start our session." What a horribly boring, banal way to start a relationship, with, I'm going to small talk you about your weekend while you walk and then jog and then run. Like, to me, that is the lowest common denominator. That's the worst of it.
Like, it checks the thermogenesis box, but it's the lightest pencil mark that you've ever seen of, like, okay,
it checks
letter of the law, yes, it checked that off.
In one movement plane, and like, it's just lazy. And so I keep on thinking, like I've said this before, you can do that warm, like, you, to an extent, there's something about being remarkable. Like, you want to be someone that is doing things. I'm not saying if I thought the way that I did it with a lot of variety wasn't as effective as doing something the same all the time, I would not do it. I mean, I'm in the business of winning games and ultimately medals.
You have the highest pressure on anybody, right? Like, hey, that's a great exercise, but we didn't win. Therefore, you're fired.
And so,
right?
Fortunately, the literature on, like, constraints-based learning and differential learning and things like that are all about letting the body self-organize when you hit it with a bunch of different variables, and how effective that can be versus rote, like, just, this is the way that you have to run. Let's do a bunch of high knees that mimic that, and then some wall drills. Like, that is hopefully going away, and people are understanding the benefits, the actual scientific benefits of a more varied kind of warm-up. There's method to this madness. Now, a difference between maybe your clientele and mine is I'm with mine twice a day, every day. So, if I only saw my athletes 3 times a week, and I had athletes that had severe, I don't know what it is, lower back pain or something like that. And now I don't want to push into your category because I'm not a physical therapist, but I would probably always, within my thermogenic fun stuff, be doing something for that lower back pain. Like, I think we agree, like, my athletes are useless if they're thinking about their pain or if they're in pain. So priority 1 all the time is getting them out of pain if they are in pain. So if I have an athlete that is in pain and my whole group is doing the stick thing with sissy squats and Turkish get-ups, I might pull them out for those 2 and say, hey, you do the stick thing with us, but then I need you going off to the side to do what the physio and I have agreed are the best 2 things for you to be able to manage your back pain for this session. And so maybe if I only had them 3 times a week, there might be more consistency. I mean, I would try to be looking for a lot of different exercises that would be equally effective in getting the back pain out of the way, along with my fun thermogenic. But I do have them so often that I think monotony is a real killer of kind of team culture, honestly. And I think that especially with that primacy effect, that starting every practice with something memorable is good. And I think from a professional standpoint, it's not terrible for me to be someone remarkable in the industry. And
it kind of has worked for you at this point because you have been shopped around from Asian teams to European teams because if nothing else, they know that you're going to engage the team, right? It won't be.
Well, I hope to leave a bunch of athletes and coaches in my wake that are all saying, oh my God, just like you have to have Rett as a coach. Like he makes you look forward. I don't know if forward to might be overstating, but you don't dread warm up every day. You don't dread the weight room. Like I'm constantly thinking about how to gamify those two things to make them engaging as well as effective.
So just to finish up here, again, a lot of the folks listening have a smaller gym, right? They don't have a full-size volleyball court or whatnot. And they're maybe doing groups of, say, anywhere between 2, 4, 6, probably not even getting up to the 8 range, right?
Right.
Can you think of any recommended, this is going to be tough because this is an audio podcast and really this would be served best by video, but any suggestions of things, hey, try this in your setup and just see how it goes as an engaging warm-up that hey, this works pretty good with people. And again, we're not going for gold medal or medalist level volleyball players. We're just talking general population. But for example, one that I thought was just so simple, I was like, oh my God, this is great. And by the way, what's your Instagram account? Because that's, I think, where people can see a lot of these in play, right?
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm going to be putting more out there. I'm sporadic on Instagram.
No, it's awesome.
But I kind of got in a competition with my wife about it to see who could get the most followers until she just blew me out of the water. Anyway, so I was going hot and heavy there for a little bit. To answer your question, I'm going to get better. I'm going to start putting all the rest of the videos up, but it is Rettasaurus. So Rettasaurus. Yep.
Yeah, Rettasaurus. So one thing that I thought was awesome is Rett took a whole group of volleyball players and said, hey, we're all going to learn this TikTok dance together, right? And you had them lined up. And I think it's novel movement. There's neurological engagement. There's that culture thing. And even if they never get it right, moving our hips and dance moves and moving our bodies in these ways, dropping down low, all these things are amazing for that neurological warm-up. And I think that could be pulled off in any gym anywhere. And the more uncomfortable it is, as long as you as the person listening, as you as the instructor are willing to stick your ass up in the air and shake a little bit, you're going to get some engagement and people will try something new. And that's at least they won't go home saying it was the same old workout.
Yeah. I think I honestly, that was something that Greg Day and I, the physical therapist that I had over in China, came up with just on a whim where when you start looking at like ladder drills, like agility ladder drills, and you were just take that ladder away. And I don't see that much of a difference between kind of the movement patterns in those feet and what you might do dancing, except for with dancing, it's to music and there's a rhythm that's necessary. And there's a brain foot coordination aspect to it. And it's freaking fun. And all the girls, and if you choose the right ones, the girls are interacting together. What it is 3 to 4 straight minutes of grinning your face off while you're sweating like crazy if you choose the right dance moves. And then it's also for the rest of practice, the girls coming up and tapping me on the shoulder and showing me like the move that we just did in the morning and they practice that. So they love getting better at it. So it ticks the box because they're getting sweaty. If I choose dances that make them get into some shapes, but then I get to, just like I said before, hey, dance is over. Everybody get down on the floor. We're now going to do some scapular retraction and we're going to do a spider crawling variations, or we're going to make you do stuff that's a little bit more difficult. Now we're going to do some abdominal stuff. Pop up. It's time to dance again. Yeah. And so, a general philosophy of mine is that fun and effective don't have to be mutually exclusive. And to answer your question, little disc cones that I feel like are in every single gym, those tiny little plastic disc cones that you see everywhere. I mean, we'll have the girls will pair up. I'll have one girl against the wall and the other one will be just frisbee shooting disc cones at them while they try to dodge them. And then in the next moment, they'll pick up the cones and they run backwards, laying them down in a serpentine while the other girl has to go around them. Then we play a game that you have to bat down all the cones while you're running at the person. Like one person's going backwards, frisbeeing the cones directly at the girl while she chases her. And you have to avoid everyone but reds and greens or something like that. Like I just make it up as I go. But in between those, again, we go back to the things that I really want to get done, which is, oh shoot, I've got to microdose I want to do some hang snatches because maybe I need to do a movement screen or something like that. And we get down to more serious business. But then, hey, everybody pick up the cones again. Here's what we're doing,
So awesome.
So it's, and like, it's just kind of that mindset. First of all, I steal so much of this stuff from like PE teachers. I'm always like, they are geniuses with coming up what to do with tall cones and little cones with just a ball or two, a tennis ball and a tall cone. There's so many, and a hula hoop. There's so many fun things that you can do. One of the best, as you talk about this, I keep thinking, do you know Mark Chang and Jimmy Ewan? I do know Mark Chang, yeah.
Yeah, and the K3 systems they developed. So right before COVID, they were putting this together and kind of got, killed like every other live event. But they were mixing rehab with martial arts, like these, when you see a guy drop down into what we would call a lateral squat, and then he does a leg sweeping from the side to in front of him, it's like, that's awesome rehab. And he's in like the tripod position. Yep. This is, they're like, oh man, we could really use that. And it's, again, engaging and it's not. So if anybody wants to check out the K3 combat systems, I think it's along those lines of engagement, fun, martial arts, challenge. Like parkour. We do, anytime I can find boxes of the appropriate height, like I'll challenge all the girls to learn how to do a cat vault or there's all kinds of fun, challenging for jumper. These are girls that jump, but I'll be like, all right, but you've never jumped this particular style before. Let me set up a mat and do this. And I've done that before. I've done precision jumps where I set up like the 2x4s and make them do twists in the air, but still have to land and balance on it like a cat. There's just no end to what, it's just turning your head to what you might see on Instagram or YouTube and be like, all right, well, how can I make this effective and safe? And how does it actually apply to volleyball or whatever sport you're in? That's awesome.
Josh, you know what I forgot to say? Let me say really quickly is that one thing to note, and it might sound like it's the wild, wild west if you have Coach Rett, and it's just, I use warm-up as a place for all of this variety. If you were to go into the weight room with me, it would be a different story. So I would hate for everyone to think that you go into the weight room and it's
a crazy man in the weight room.
We're doing front squats. Never done that before. All right. All right. I guess we're doing single leg squats. We're doing that before. I'm much more, I wouldn't say I don't know if I'm like every strength coach, but in the weight room, we absolutely have big rocks and we're chasing.
And do you find yourself
speed
less creative in the weight room? Like, so under load, like, are they doing
100%
fairly predictive stuff?
Yeah. So less creative in a way that you wouldn't see hula hoops and tennis balls. And I'm not like throwing stuff at them necessarily, so they have to dodge it or whatever it is. But I put a ton of my brain into how can I gamify a weight room where we kind of always need to be doing this hinge pattern. And how can I make my volleyball players need to squat? They bilaterally jump in a squat in a knee dominant position all the time. It's part of volleyball. But how can I make this fun by saying, hey, we're going to squat today with chains and it's on push bands and we're all competing to see who can have the fastest speed with 60 kilos. And next week, we're going to take the bands off. Everyone's going 30 kilos. It's jump squats though. And we're all competing to see who has the highest vertical jump with 30 kilos. The next week we're doing bands and we're going heavy. And the next week, it's a terrible progression because it actually would be, I'm exaggerating because it would normally be like kind of strength, getting heavier, but different. And then we'd probably deload and do something fast and light. And that's kind of how it would be stepwise progression. So I would want still when they walk in the weight room, I want them running up to the whiteboard and being like, okay, it looks like we're having a challenge to see who can, we're in teams of two and we're seeing which team of two can hang from a bar for 5 total minutes with the fewest switches between the athletes. You know, you have to hang with scapular depression and retraction.
So let me try an analogy here and see if this works for you. Your warm-ups are like the most crazy, those over-the-top funny sushi chefs that are like mix and matching stuff, you don't know what you're going to have.
Right.
But your weight room is more like Chipotle. Roughly, we've got the same stuff. Yeah, I can make it a little more spicy. I can make a bowl out of it. I can make a burrito, but we're not varying that much. Whereas the sushi guy is like, hey, this is I'm going to vary it a lot in color, in size, in roll, in deep fried, not deep fried. Like, now he still is restricted on, what he's had, but what he gets that day, he's going to say like, oh, wow, the mackerel's really good. I'm going to make something out of it.
Yeah. There's still, at Chipotle, there's still just 4 or 5 meats, right? So we're eating those 5 meats every single meal, but it's my job is to, not all the time, but for many of the exercises, mix that up. And if I know that volleyball players need, let's say, strong calves or something, well, now it's like, okay, well, am I going to do a single leg one, a bilateral? Am I going to do it maybe a over eccentric? With a lot of these accessory exercises, it is like, okay, we're not just doing calf raises or pogos all the time. Like we're going to be trying to keep your body guessing and progressing.
But don't worry, we're not going to eliminate calf raises or pogos as a possibility in the right setting.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. All right, Rhett. Well, I feel like I would love to have you on again and talk all about the weight room version of this and some recommendations. I just think you're amazing at warm-ups. So for folks who want to read that article that I read about weaponizing your warm-up, where's that sucker posted?
Yeah, that's on Sportsmith.
Okay. Sportsmith.
Yep, it's on sportsmith.com, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, so you could just probably type in Rett Larson and weaponize. It'll probably come up. But I'm happy you read that. Like I really loved writing that article. It was a good brain dump of a lot of stuff I'd been thinking. And also, go ahead.
For everybody listening, it's not just an article. What I love about it is you make the case for, hey, do this thing, and then you show a couple different videos showing that in real life. So it's not just pictures of things. It's like when you're talking about the tennis ball drill or the TikTok dance, seeing a team go through it, and they're not perfect. Like there's no expectation that this is going to, you watch Rhett, one thing I would say is you're accepting of a lot of mistakes if it serves the goal we're going for.
100%. Thank you for mentioning that, Josh.
Yeah.
I think hopefully I mentioned in the article that I think that perfection is the enemy of a great warm-up. Like, of course, I am cueing towards better movement mastery. I came from a place where we were exacting about that kind of thing, but
like restrictively, like exacting too much on it.
Well, yeah. Like the moment someone can't do a proper lunge, you're regressing them to this or that, right? I'm absolutely not that way in warm up, especially with my clients who are elite athletes. Like I push their progressions until they're failing, and I allow them to back it up when they need to. But this is a place to fall down and push yourself. And I absolutely will allow some bad technique as long as it's not dangerous and as long as they know better, right? As long as I can say, hey, what was wrong with that? Well, I got under the bar by bending my back or rounding my back. All right, good. You're aware of it? Perfect. But never under load. That's the difference, is that warm-ups are rarely under load, never under heavy load. In the weight room, that's how you get hurt, is doing things like that. So they have, as long as they know the rules, they can break them in warm-up.
Right. And one thing too, for the listeners of this, your workouts can be a little bit more forgiving because you have for the most part, incredibly resilient, young, highly athletic population, very adaptable.
Yep.
Again, this is a different conversation if somebody is 3 weeks out from low back pain with radiating pain going down their leg. So just always take that context. But
100%.
What Rhett's saying is a little bit of variation, because that's normal movement, right? If you watch your kid play, if your kid goes to the playground, they don't like step up and make sure their feet are even and then like, okay, I'm going to do this. It's like they fall, they trip, they reach, they fall on their butt, and that's totally okay. And it's kind of fun, Yeah. it's kind of fun. So yeah, that's great. Well, I'd love to have you on again and we can talk about these things. And I really appreciate it because I'd love to dive into the weight room and what you've learned there. peak performance from the Holiday Inn Express, you know?
Check here for my next ebook. Right.
Awesome. All right, Rhett. So on Instagram, it's Rettasaurus.
Yep.
And that article can be found on sportsmith.com.
Yep, that's right.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of Rett Larson, let me, I think everybody out there, there's so much fun when you engage you engage people and you get them moving in a way that they remember and it shakes up their little snow globe. The rewards are huge. And I will tell you, Rhett, one thing, I don't know if you see this, but a lot of physios and chiros and PTs, we get into this thing where we're treating pain, and we forget how fun movement can be.
Yeah.
And so when you bolt on this exercise and gym to your clinic, one of the greatest things is the number of high fives you get in a week goes up by like 100%, right? Or 100 times, right? And especially when you start engaging people in these fun warm-ups and make it interesting and exciting, it goes up even higher. So if for no other reason, it'll make the long days feel short if you just create these.
You're speaking my language, Josh. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it, Rhett. And for everybody listening, I'll sign off by saying, go out there, maximize your license, and live the life you dream of. Thanks so much, Rhett.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much for checking out these videos. I hope they're useful. We'll cover things like rehab, exercise, business model, progressions, layout, everything else that helps you build a clinic. So if you're interested, you can click here, there, here, or anywhere to get more videos just like this. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you soon.